Okay, this is my Bill of Rights video. Unfortunately, 3 people could not make it into the video. My stepmom, my mom, and my mom's fiance. And so, yeah, here's the video.
A summary of the First Amendment is U.S. citizens have freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition.
So freedom of religion and the practice of religion is important to me because it helps me to know that I can practice whatever religion I want. I don't have to be a specific religion or believe in something someone tells me to believe in. Freedom of speech is important to me because I can express my own opinion and I don't have to be worried about being put in jail or something for it. Freedom of the press is important to me because it helps me know that I can post and say whatever I want publicly. Yeah, that's the reasons why those are important to me.
For the Second Amendment is U.S. citizens have the right to keep and bear arms or own guns.
Okay, so the Second Amendment talks about us being able to, the right to bear arms, the right to form militias, and so forth. The reason why this amendment is so vitally important, one has to first go back in time and try to understand the Founding Fathers and what they were trying to escape from. They were escaping from an oppressive government, which was the English crown in Europe, which was trying to have unjust influence over the colonists here in America. And they decided it wasn't right, it wasn't correct for this government to have the type of control they were having over the colonists when the colonists did not get a right to have voice in that government or place it within that government, and that the only way to allow any colonists, any people, to be able to have the control necessary over their own life and well-being was to give them the right to bear arms so that no government could unrighteously wield power over the people. That the government was always intended to be in fear of the people because the government is an entity that works on behalf and for the people, not the people for the government. And if people did not have the right to bear arms, the right to form militias, without those two rights, then governments could come in and make people do whatever they wanted to make the people do, take away all their liberties, all their freedoms, and essentially tell them what time they have to get up, what time they have to have breakfast, lunch, dinner. I mean, it literally could get that bad if the people don't have the power to actually rule over the government. And the right to bear arms was to allow the people the right to protect property, to protect self, to protect others from any infringement. That is, whether it was from somebody that lives next door to you trying to invade you, from foreign governments, as well as from our own government becoming too power hungry and trying to take unrighteous dominion over the people, over the citizenry. And without this right, that's what would happen in this country, just as it has happened in many other countries. If you look at other countries that have it where the people, the citizens, do not have a right to bear arms, those governments typically rule with the totalitarian form of government, where that government has utter and total complete power and the citizens have no rights, no power, and there's nothing they can do about it without interference from foreign countries kind of the way our government does in other countries, trying to help support freedom fighters in other countries, such as Syria, where we are trying to arm people to fight against their own government for their own freedoms. Well, that is the same idea that our founding fathers had for us, their descendants, to be able to keep our freedom, to never allow anyone, not even our own government, to take that freedom from us.
The summary of the Third Amendment is the government may not force U.S. citizens to shelter soldiers in their homes.
So this amendment is important to me because it helps for me to know that I won't have a random soldier showing up at my house saying that he's being forced to live here. Because I don't know if I could trust the person, they could steal stuff from me, and yeah.
Summary for the Fourth Amendment is U.S. citizens are protected from unreasonable searches of a person's property.
This is what my stepmom said. We have the right to have a secure or safe home without police or others coming in and without asking and searching for things without a warrant. We also have the right to have unreasonable body searches. This allows us to have safety in our communities and homes.
Summary for the Fifth Amendment is the government may not force U.S. citizens to testify against themselves in court.
This is what my mom said. The Fifth Amendment impacts me and my life in many ways. If we break down the Fifth Amendment, we can see how each of the parts impact someone. The first part of the amendment states, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. This means that they need to prove that I committed a crime before they can arrest me. The next part of the amendment states, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. This means that if I am not found guilty of a crime, that the courts cannot continue to bring me to court until they reach the verdict they want. So in other words, I cannot be tried for the same crime twice. The next part states, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This means that in court, if I plead the Fifth Amendment, I cannot be forced to testify against myself or plead guilty. I cannot be forced to incriminate myself. To incriminate myself. This part also states that we are allowed due process. This means that they cannot just decide to convict you of a crime because they feel like it. They must make a law, pass a law. I have to break the law, and then they can take me to court for that crime, meaning you are innocent until proven guilty. The last part states, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. This means that if the government must take my private property, that it must be compensated. They cannot just rob me of my possessions. So how all this information impacts my life is as I know that I have many rights before I can be arrested or taken to court. That the government does not have the power to do whatever they want just because they are in a bad mood or do not like someone. There are steps that need to be taken.
A summary for the Sixth Amendment is U.S. citizens have the right to a speedy and public trial.
The reason why that amendment is very important is because it helps to keep our justice system honest. If people who are accused of a crime don't have any protections, then it would be the same as saying they're automatically guilty before they've had an opportunity to prove their innocence. The fact that they get the right to a speedy trial is so that they're not being unfairly punished when they may be innocent. the part where it talks about having a jury, it's to make sure that your case is being heard by your peers, not just by some random person just selected out of the blue that may live halfway across the world from you. So that way you're being judged fairly by those who understand the environment from which you live in and so forth. The fact that in this amendment you also get the opportunity to produce witnesses, and that the other side cannot restrict you, or the prosecution can't restrict you from bringing forth evidence to try to prove that you're not guilty. Because we live in a nation where a person is innocent until proven guilty. And if we did not give the person that's accused any rights to defend themselves, then it would actually be as though we lived in a society where you were guilty until proven innocent. And that's not the society that this America is.
Summary for the Seventh Amendment is U.S. citizens have the right to a trial by jury.
This is from my mom's fiance. The Seventh Amendment doesn't impact my life currently, but it's good that we as Americans have it. As with all of the amendments, they are very detailed. The Seventh gives you the right to sue someone who owes you money, but it needs to be more than $20. You can choose if you would like a judge or a jury to decide the verdict, and it must take place in a federal court. Once the verdict is decided, the case is closed permanently, never to be opened again.
The Eighth Amendment is U.S. citizens are protected from cruel and unusual punishment.
Okay, this is what my stepmom said. It protects us from enormous fines that are set. Like for littering, if you get caught littering, you can get fined a small amount instead of some crazy amount that is way too high. It also protects American people against excessive punishment. Like if you do something. If we get a ticket for speeding, there is usually a set amount instead of a huge amount that has to be paid. This has not affected me because I have not paid any fines.
Summary for the Ninth Amendment is U.S. citizens may have rights that are not listed in the Constitution.
This one was from my mom. Now let's take a look at how the Ninth Amendment impacts my life. The Ninth Amendment says that even though a rule or a law is not in the Constitution, does not mean that it does not exist or does not apply. When we take a look at what this means to me is that if my state passes a law to protect its citizens, that the government cannot say because it is not in the Constitution, it does not exist or apply. It allows the state to pass laws that apply to their own state and citizens. It also allows the states to be equal to the government and reassures them that they have power to do what is right for their citizens.
The Tenth Amendment is powers not given to the federal government by the U.S. Constitution belong to the state or to the people. This is from my mom's fiance. The Tenth Amendment impacts my life because it shows how much vision our forefathers had for America. The Tenth Amendment was the last amendment written in the original Constitution, and it basically says that if it is not written in the Constitution, that it is up to the individual states to decide. They did this to balance the power between federal and state government. This is why when you travel from state to state, you see different speed limits. Every state has different laws, and it is because of the Great 10th Amendment.